Thank you, Melissa. I'm going to move us on to our next speaker, Alyzande Renard, who is a learning mentor and a Sheffield Woman in technology, and she'll be sharing some of her lived experiences as an autistic person. I'd like to just issue a caution warning in case it's not been noted in the Eventbrite information that there will be a general mention of domestic and sexual violence in this presentation. Once again, we'd be happy to take questions via the chat box at the end, and Melissa is maybe in a position to answer them straight after Alyzande's presentation. Thank you very much. Over to you, Alyzande.
Hi everyone. I'm just getting getting this to work.
Do you want me to keep my video on?
Either way is okay.
Okay, cool.
To do the whole presentation. Right. That should work. Is that working, guys? Great. Okay. Hi. I've been pulled in to chat to you guys about autism. So hi, I'm Alyzande, and I work as a learning mentor. And I've also been coming to Sheffield Women in Tech for a few years now, so you probably know me. Hi. So I'm going to introduce you to a couple of people here, not their real names. And we're going to start off with Jane Smith. So Jane has a bachelor's degree in business management. She's got a master's degree in computing with a dissertation in machine learning, and teaches MERN stack web development to career restarters. She's a mum to 2 adult sons. What about hobbies? She founded the leading website in a video gaming niche and applied for a Guinness World Record as the world's richest person in World of Warcraft, but was turned down because they didn't want to create a new record. And she is a published author, and the first book was out 20 years ago. She's also run her own business for 10 years. That's Jane Smith. And now I'm going to introduce you to Jane Jones. Jane Jones has been the victim or survivor of repeated child abuse, of repeated domestic violence, of repeated sexual assaults. She struggles to talk to people or make friends. Sometimes she can't talk at all. She's a bit weird, and she has strange behaviours like flapping or fiddling. She doesn't always understand what you're saying. She sometimes says offensive things to you and doesn't even notice. She has massive career gaps. She's untidy and disorganized and complains about things that are easy to you. Maybe she's just really lazy. So the question is, which one of these would you like to hire for your company? Or which one would you like to invite to your next party? Before you can answer that, I'm going to tell you a gotcha, which is that they are the same person. Jane Smith and Jane Jones is both me. Plot twist, it's me. So hi, I'm Alyzande and I'm autistic. So I can't talk about how autism affects anyone else except for me. And I wanted to share a few anecdotes of some situations that have happened. There are so many stereotypes of autism, and so I want to include some aspects of a neurotype that you might not have previously thought about. So here's one situation that might affect me. So imagine I am told, don't stop strangers in the street, that's harassment. But then at the same time, maybe I go on Facebook or Twitter and I read something like, oh, someone stopped me in the street and told me I looked pretty. And it was amazing. I felt so good and so happy all day. Well, I want my friend to feel like that. So I don't know, I'm going to go and try it. And I stop a stranger in the street and I smile and I tell them, hey, your hair looks nice. But I'm going to get a range of responses from confused thank yous to neutral puzzlement, to angry voices, and all the way up to sexual assault in response. Now here's the most important part of it. I can't tell in advance which response I will get. I don't know whether I shouldn't be harassing people in the street, or whether this person who said that I ought to go and tell people that they're pretty is right instead. I cannot tell. So that's just one anecdote from my life. So I wanted to share this strange anecdote. So I have sensory processing problems. That means that some of my senses are either over or undertuned. What feels like a soft touch to you can be extremely painful to me, and the opposite way. And this works for all of the senses. So one of mine is that the sensory processing of brushing my teeth is very painful and difficult. So I need to visit the dentist more often. However, it's really difficult to access the dentist because they require you to phone up. And phone conversations aren't possible for me because of my communication disabilities. So I have to take extra time off to walk, and I have to walk over to the dentist and make the appointments face to face. And managing that appointment can be very hard because of my executive dysfunction and time blindness. So even if I manage to get an appointment and remember it and get myself there on time, I still face hurdles of social communication with the dentist, plus all the sensory input difficulties of the light, the noise, the pain, the anesthetic, and basically it all adds up to make things super hard. And basically what looks like I am lazy and unhygienic. Having teeth that aren't nice then impacts on my self-confidence. It makes customer facing work hard, and it makes people have prejudiced views against me. So I included that because I know people talk a lot about stereotypes in autism, so I wanted to include something that had affected me directly that you might not have thought about. So as Melissa said, the spectrum is not a line from slightly autistic to severely autistic. The spectrum affects everybody differently. It's not a linear. Each of the traits that can be affected are affected to a greater or lesser extent in each person. And of course, the extent that you're affected can change over time. I might be capable of doing a presentation today. Tomorrow I might be completely overwhelmed and not be able to speak at all. And of course, the wrongfully applied line is used as a ladder to wrongfully line people up from won't benefit from help to doesn't deserve any help. And it's used to make autistic people feel that they're not valued or wanted or useful, whether they're wherever they are on the autism spectrum. So here's some of the impacts. Sensory differences, for example, auditory processing delay. Auditory processing delay for me, it looks like you will ask me something and I will understand you. But then 2 seconds later, I finally managed to process what you're saying, and then I'm able to speak. Social communication, for example, bluntness. For me, if you ask me a question about something, then you want to know the answer to it. So I will give you the answer to it. That would be honest and polite to me, but perhaps to someone else that would be too blunt. Verbal or non-verbal, executive functioning, such as planning, organizing, starting things on time, finishing things on time, remembering to include everything. So each of these can be impacted to a greater or lesser extent. The amount of impact is also not set, changes from time to time. For example, I might be okay with chatting to strangers when I'm well rested, but on a day when I've had lots of bright light inputs and 3 people try to talk to me at once, then maybe my communication is reduced to grunting and pointing and grimacing. So let's have a look, because we're women in tech, I thought I would have a little look briefly at the professional world. Can I please join in? I can't use the phone because verbal communication without visual cues gives me auditory processing delays. and social imbalances that I just don't understand. And I'm either too blunt, or I go off on a tangent, or I'm accidentally rude, or I accidentally interrupt or misunderstand some social context I just can't understand. I can be great at a job and work my socks off in overtime and focus and drive, but I'm terrible at interviews. So how to include your autistic colleagues? Ask them what would help. So these are just starter tips, because every autistic person is at a different place on the spectrum, and I can't talk for anyone else except for me. My autistic colleague might be much more comfortable with public speaking than me, but he might be unable to wear smart clothes because the fabric is so uncomfortable, but it takes all of his attention. So ask them what would help. More time to process and understand things. Don't depend on them to tell you everything. We do have Google now. Don't judge. Remember my teeth. Consider sensory input. A desk by the window might be nice for you, beautiful sunshine, or it might be painful for your autistic co-worker. And make allowances for miscommunications. Windows and Macs and Linux computers are all computers, but they can struggle to talk directly to each other. And this isn't the fault of either Windows or Mac or Linux. It's just a normal part of diversity. It's like going on holiday to Spain and thinking that the locals are all barbarians because they don't speak English, even when you shout very loudly at them. See, I've done my part by trying super hard to understand how to speak neurotypical and masking. You could do your part by trying just as hard to understand me. And please don't exclude us. So this is just an anecdote of one evening I went out. I was in a group of mates from the tech world, and we were talking about neurodiversities like autism and ADHD and dyslexia, and they weren't well informed on the subject, but they were very keen to voice their opinion. So many of us will have encountered something similar to this before in mansplaining. A group of people who don't have that lived experience explaining why their opinion is much more important in a loud voice that prevents people with the lived experience from sharing their opinion. So this is actually a term called able-splaining, the act of a non-disabled person condescendingly explaining disability, especially with the presumption that the disabled lack relevant understanding or authority, or not in a position to speak for themselves. So that particular situation was ironic because they didn't know that I was autistic. So I'm my words, because I'm not used to public speaking and I'm obviously autistic and nervous. So the situation I was saying was ironic because they didn't know that I was autistic, and they didn't know that I could have easily answered their thoughts on the matter. But there was a double irony. My autism meant that it was hard for me to communicate with them. I needed extra time to process the audio input that they were providing into ordered points in my head that I could answer, and then retranslating those points into verbal outputs suitable for the people who were able-splaining to me. So by the time I managed that, they had moved on to their next negative opinion. What made that situation remarkable was that in this group of people, one person stopped the able-splaining. They turned to me and included me by very, very simply asking me, "What do you think?" So I'm going to leave that dangling for you to think about how easily you can include your colleagues just by asking them to join in. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyzande. Much appreciated, and you did really, really well this evening. Really enjoyed your presentation, both you and Melissa. Thank you so much for speaking today.